We are back live from Manchester, New Hampshire, and Jeb Bush going on the attack against frontrunner Donald Trump. Bush tearing into Trump's criticism of anyone who stands up to him, calling the real estate mogul the real loser, in Jeb's opinion. Watch this.
Let me echo what Lindsay said. It is a sign of real weakness when you call John McCain or Leo Thorsness or anybody else that was a POW who served this country in a way that should be admired, American heroes, calling them losers. Donald Trump, you're the loser.
Judd Gregg knows New Hampshire pretty much better than anybody. Former governor of this state, also longtime senator from New Hampshire, and he is a Jeb Bush supporter. Good to see you, Senator. Good morning to you. It's very interesting. You see your candidate, Jeb Bush, going after Donald Trump really hard on the campaign trail, and everybody else sort of going at each other, basically. What's that dynamic, and do you think that there's something behind the scenes at work here?
I think Jeb genuinely feels that Donald Trump won't be a very good candidate for president for the Republican Party, and he wants to make the point that there's a significant contrast there in styles and ability and purpose.
So, you could find article after article after article that said that Jeb Bush's campaign was dead, that he could never make it. Calling him the low-energy label that Donald Trump put on him stuck to him really hard. Yep. He does seem to have some new confidence out there on the campaign trail. You wrote a piece that you said you actually believe that Donald Trump may lose in New Hampshire. How do you figure that when you look at the polls?
Well, I think he's definitely going to lose from a perception standpoint. He may win, but it's going to be a lot closer than people think. In addition, I think, as you said, Jeb got off to a slow start. It took him a while to find his voice. He was very weak in the first couple of debates, but in the last few debates he's been excellent, superb. And if you go to these town meetings, he's really strong. So I think he has his voice, and I think it's going to do him very well as he moves on. What's going to happen here in New Hampshire, in my opinion, is that New Hampshire's a perception election. Some people are perceived as losing even if they win. I think Donald Trump's going to be perceived as losing New Hampshire because he doesn't win it by big enough. And I think Jeb Bush and John Kasich and maybe somebody else will be perceived as winning because they're going to do a lot better than expectations.
You wrote a very interesting piece, and you say you believe that Hillary will be the nominee.
Absolutely.
Because the power structure within the Democratic Party is so solid and monolithic, especially when you head out of New Hampshire. But that's not so on the GOP side, that there is no power structure within the GOP side. Explain that to everybody at home, and who does that benefit, if anybody?
Well, the Democratic Party has a very clear power structure. It's big labor, education unions, it's the African-American activist groups, such as the Black Caucus, and the environmental movement. The radical environmental movement, and they basically control the nomination process. And Hillary's their candidate, and she's going to win. Bernie's good entertainment, and he's going to do well here and there, and he's going to certainly get young votes because people haven't been explained how bad socialism is. Somebody missed that in their school education. But as a practical matter, she'll win the nomination. Our side, we don't have a power center. People say the Tea Party's basically a spread all over the place, and here in New Hampshire it's not, there's not a hardcore evangelical movement or even a hardcore what you'd call far-right movement. It's just folks who are rational conservatives who want to see a quality government and would rather have less government than more government. And so the party doesn't have elders, so to say, or power centers to pick people.
Let's take a look at the latest poll. This is a Monmouth poll. There's a lot of polls out there, but we're just going to put this one up for right now and get a look at where it stands. You've got Donald Trump at 30%. This is the New Hampshire voters. Kasich at 14%. And you can see that bunch that is very close. The governors and Ted Cruz is in there, and Marco Rubio is in there as well. How much do you think what happened on the debate stage the other night with Marco Rubio, how much do you think that hurt him?
I think it was significant. He ran into Chris Christie, who's a street fighter from New Jersey. And I guess his folks had told him he had to repeat his message, and he repeated it once too many times, so he tripped over his own shoelaces. But he's still an extremely charismatic individual. He's good for the party. He brings a whole different atmosphere of supporters into the party. But I do think he has sort of gone into standstill mode here in New Hampshire, and you're seeing both Governor Bush and Governor Kasich moving up pretty fast.
I want to ask you about Ted Cruz, because I read a piece last week that basically argued that there is a sort of undercurrent evangelical vote in New Hampshire that has not been tapped into in the primary process in this state, and that he has been able to connect with those voters here and bring them out. Now, when you're looking at a primary that could be so spread between so many voters, is it possible that he finds those evangelical voters in New Hampshire that people tend to believe don't exist, and that helps bump him up into second place, perhaps?
Well, there are a lot of people in this state who are seriously religious,
Yeah.
and there's no question about that, but they're not going with Cruz, in my opinion. I mean, he's an unethical individual. To have him lead our party would be a disaster. And you know, you can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool some of the people long enough to get elected. And he may be fooling some folks, but I think most people are seeing him for what he is, which is a person who doesn't have any ethics. He's not trustworthy. And as a very practical matter, he's not going to get a big vote in New Hampshire, maybe 10, 12%, but it's not going to be a big vote.
Judd Gregg, calling it like you see it in New Hampshire. Thank you, Senator. Very good to see you. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me on.
Many thanks.